Hi there, bonsai lovers. This is the Bonsai Stuff podcast. I'm Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and I really hope you've been enjoying some one-on-one time up close and personal with your trees as we're smack bang into the repotting season. Well, I am anyway. Lots of trees coming across my workbench that I need to sort out and get on track for the next 2, 3, 4 years of solid root growth, which means solid foliage growth, which means I can take that step forward. As I've said before many, many times, I think that repotting is one of the best things that we can do for our bonsai. We offer that shot in the arm, that we encourage them and we reinvigorate them, and we provide them the opportunity to grow plenty of new roots in this lovely open soil mix that we have. Allows them to take up lots of fertiliser and really gives them a big pump in their stride. Makes them a lot stronger by doing repotting correctly. But in today's podcast, I'm going to keep the repotting focus going because, as I said, I like to keep this as topical and something that may come across your bonsai workbench as well as you're dealing with things. And a few things I've had to deal with lately. One of them is dealing with a brick. When you take a tree out of a pot that's possibly been in there a little bit too long, but more specifically focusing on root work that hasn't been done previously that should have been done, where corners have been cut for whatever reason, how to get them, correct them, and go to that next step. And I'm also going to talk about another root issue, surprise, surprise, talking about repotting with regard to root rot and just to how to identify it and what it looks like and more along the lines of what it smells like. But anyway, it'll become very clear to you throughout the podcast that this is repotting season, and if you haven't started, well, I reckon it's going to happen for you in the next week or so, next couple of weeks, and everyone should be pretty busy. Hopefully, I've had a few messages where people are coming to the end of their repotting season, which is brilliant. I'm nowhere near that. I'm still at the start, trying to scratch things together to make sure that I've got everything covered off. Doing plenty of repotting, but just not enough of my own trees. Anyway, that'll get sorted out in the next few weeks. All right, let's get in the podcast. Dealing with a brick. That's what my note says. Now, a brick. You may have come across these if you're relatively new to bonsai and you're still taking things out of black tubs and plastic pots and moving them into bonsai pots. Then quite possibly this won't be a common thing for you. You may have come across it here and there, but really the bricks occur for me. I'll go back a step. So when we first repot a tree, it's nice and fine, nice and open. The root system should be very conducive to allowing water to flow through it and plenty of new room for roots to grow. Nice open mix. Often one of the complaints is, or one of the issues with this new with an open mix, a pumice-based mix, is that using a moisture meter or something like that, you just can't get contact for the probe to actually tell you whether it's wet or dry. And there's this fear that things are drying out too fast when they're not. The particles hold the water and all the rest of it. But anyway, that system, that environment that the roots are in, doesn't stay like that for very long. As the roots start to take up all the available space in the pot, they start to become very dense. And then what happens is, over a period of time, they get too dense. So even though we've got really fine feeder roots and no big, thick, chunky ones, we've got lots of fine feeder roots in there. If you let things slip by without repotting, that fine feeder root can become a solid concrete-like substance. When you take it out of the pot, it's seriously like scratching at a brick with a fork, trying to break up those roots. But you need to work it. The other time, and this is the one that I want to talk about more specifically, dealing with a brick. And this was a scenario that I had the other day where someone had a tree repotted by somebody. They'd taken it out, basically got the saw out, cut down take the 20% of roots off the tree. That's cool, no worries. Not that I'd do it that way, but that's what they did very quickly. Then the tree was put back into a nice open mix. Beautiful, no complaints there. Everything's good. Tree was tied in, perfect, great, no worries. New soil added, worked in, off it went, perfect. But a couple of years later, the tree comes back and it's not in the best of health. and there's some dieback. There's things that are going to definitely die as well as spring comes around, and the tree's just struggling. And it was like, what's the cause of this? So we took the tree out of the pot, had a look at it, look at all the new fluffy roots around there. Beautiful, perfect, no worries. But then as we start working back, it's like there's this brick that's in the middle that's taking up at least 80% of the capacity of the pot that had not been worked from last time. So the new roots had grown, but they'd only had a very small area to start growing into, and water wasn't penetrating this brick. So the tree, even though you could tick the box and say yes, it was repotted, it wasn't repotted correctly. So then you've got to go backwards a step and correct errors that should have been fixed this time. It's very hard correcting a root issue 2 years down the track because you've sort of rushed it. So I'm prompting you, I'm begging you that as you repot this year, don't cut corners. Don't look for how quickly you can get this done. It's got to be done properly. It's got to be done so the root system can develop. So next time when you take it out and you look at repotting, it's perfect. It's just easy. It's just the whole system gets a lot easier once it's been done correctly. And that's, you may have to make hard decisions. You may have to spend a lot longer than what you'd allocated. You may not get through as many trees in one sitting. You might only get through one. One tree for me, a complex tree, is hours and hours of work on those roots. But I know that it's so good for the tree and that I'm going to get such a good result out of it for the next 2, 3, 4 years, whatever it is, that if I invest that time now, then I don't have to worry about it. And then next time when I go to repot as well, I'll spend the same amount of time, but it's just, I know there's no issues, that I haven't compromised on anything. I've done it the right way. So when you get to dealing with a brick, like that's too dense, it's too hard, and as you start working to open it up, and this is what you have to do. You have to work very slowly and very gently. So when you're dealing with a solid area, if you just get your root rake or root hook or whatever it is that you're using, and you just start slamming on that thing and you start whacking it as hard as you can, you'll actually start tearing massive chunks off, because these bricks, they often have a lot of dead roots in there. They haven't been able to breathe, haven't been able to feed, they haven't got any water, so they've just died out. The harder that you hack at these things, the more it's going to fall off. Like, it's going to fall off in big, big chunks. So you've got to take, or how I do it is either use a chopstick or something fine and sharp, or I'll use my small root rake, not a big root rake, a small one, and I'll gently work it small sections at a time. So if you imagine, I sort of focus on an area that's maybe sort of 3 centimetres by 3 centimetres, and I'll just work that slowly. I won't be jumping around. I won't be looking at the rest of it. I talk about putting on the horse blinkers when you're working on your trees, and this is exactly one of those scenarios that I do that. I focus on that little 3 centimetre by 3 centimetre square, and I'll work it gently with the root rake. And then when I see that starting to fluff up a little bit, it might not be perfect, but it starts to fluff up a little bit, then I'll move to the next one, left or right, whichever way you prefer. Just turn the tree slightly or move along another 3 centimetre by 3 centimetre. So I can feel like I'm achieving something by doing this 3 centimetre by 3 centimetre, breaking it up, seeing the roots come apart and go, okay, cool. So then I'll go around the whole tree. Next thing I'll do is I'll get the scissors out and I'll start removing roots. I'll start cutting things back a little bit, and then I'll get the root rake once I've done that and start 3 centimetre by 3 centimetre again, and just start, gently working it, and just keep doing that over and over and over. The bottom of the root ball, the sides, the top. My preference is to start on the top of the root ball and work from the outside back towards the nabari, back towards the trunk, and just gently do it. Don't be so aggressive that you're going to be damaging things. As I said, you're going to find a lot of this stuff you're going to be removing anyway. A lot of it's going to be dead and dark brown, and or just no life in it whatsoever. It'll be bone dry. No water will have got through there. So by doing this raking, this gentle raking as step one, and the cutting, I'm starting to reduce the physical size of the brick, of the root ball, right? So once you've got that done, you've been round, you've done the bottom, you've really started to reduce the size of this brick, then you've got to break it up a little bit. You've got to start to allow water and air to penetrate that very hard surface that you've got. And one of the things that I use is a Phillips head screwdriver that I've used forever. It's got a nice long probe on it with a nice wooden handle that I can grab hold of, and I'll put that in there, and I'll get a hammer and I'll tap it through, and then I'll aerate, and I'll go around the whole tree like that. You have these holes in there. I've talked about this plenty of times. But once I've got that open, then I'll go through with the root rake and I'll start raking again, because you'll find that once you've separated the inner area of those roots, it gets a little bit softer. So then you can start raking things apart. And my end game with this is to have a nice, light, even, fluffy root ball that's all the way around. So when I actually, with my hands, I pinch the root ball, pinch what was the brick, I can suddenly feel it a bit more like a sponge, which means that when I water it, it's going to penetrate. When I fertilise, it's going to get into those areas. It's going to allow for those roots to come back from where they were and start to regrow in that area. Will it be a brick in another 2 or 3 years' time when I take it out? Yeah, possibly it will be, but it's a brick that I'll work back again and again and again every time that I repot it to make sure that it's able to support the tree. I don't want to have a bonsai pot that I look at and suddenly in the back of my head I think that's a big pot, that's a great pot, everything's going to be cool with this, but putting a brick back into the middle of that hasn't been worked properly means that you may as well be in a very shallow dish where there's going to be very little root system to support the foliage of that tree. And you know how it works. If there's not enough root system down below, then the foliage mass above is what suffers. Spring might be fine, you'll get nice good growth. Suddenly it gets to summer and then you start getting dieback and burning and you just can't get water into the tree. Maybe internodes start to push out the first year nice and strongly on new shoots, but then you get to the second year and things really slow down with it. You start looking for reasons for what's the cause of this. It's because there's just not enough availability of volume for the root system to grow. So therefore, the tree has to make sacrifices. It'll do whatever it has to do to survive. Then that means that the root system cannot support all that foliage mass, or it can't support big long shoots. It can't support that sacrifice branch that you're running, whatever it is. Then it'll make a compromise and say, okay, well, we need to stay alive. What part's best serving my purpose at the moment? All right, it's the apex of the tree. Cool. Let's push everything we've got there because we're a bit of a state of panic. So therefore, let's let that lower branch get weaker and die. Let's not worry about that. Next thing you know, you'll see pests starting to come in a lot more on specific trees, and they're weaker because their root system's nowhere near as strong as what it should be. And I find that these dead areas, these bricks, they're often the cause of it. And I'll put my hand up. Sometimes, I choose to not repot quite as frequently as what I should. I'll hold back a little bit, which means that brick develops a bit more than what it possibly should, and my bonsai pays the price, and I kick myself, and I try and encourage myself to ensure that I don't let it happen again. Does it happen? Of course it does. I always push it a little bit too hard, but when you do get that brick, just work it slowly, small areas, rake, cut, rake, cut, rake, cut. Aerate, open it up a little bit, go back to the raking process and just work it slowly. Don't set a stopwatch for yourself, just take as long as it's going to take. All right, let's move on to the completely boring issue of root rot. It's a funny topic I find to talk about on a podcast, but it's one of these things as tree lovers, as bonsai people that we all are. You come across. I've come across it with mine. And I guarantee you that you'll come across it with yours. I never think it's something that people do deliberately. So I never get looking down my snout at people going, "Oh, you should never have root rot." Everyone has it. Just the way it occurs. And the reason why this sparked up was I was doing a repotting class very recently, and there was a room full of people, and said, all right, so this is how we cut the tie-in wires, this is how we do this is how we do that, and we're going to use a sickle, and we're going to go around the edge of the pot, we're going to break the bond between the tree and the pot, and then we're going to put our hands up nice and high up the trunk so we don't damage any bark, and we're going to put one hand on the pot and one hand on the trunk, we're going to pop the tree backwards and it'll come out. So everyone gets their tools out, they're working independently, all sort of spread out, and doing their thing. Everyone's, cutting the wires and getting the sickles and get ready to take the tree out of the pot, and all of a sudden, pop, they all go at the same time, and then all of a sudden this stink, absolute rotten, filthy stink comes out, and everyone's like, oh, that tree. And the root ball, everything looked nice and good on this little trident maple, but as soon as you popped it out, you get the stink, and the stink comes from root rot. That's probably the first indicator for me that I look for when I'm working on a tree, is to smell the roots. So, like let's say you've got a tree that's having a hard time somewhere down in summer, and things aren't going right, and you're just not sure, and maybe it didn't get repotted like it should have. And
we'll be right back.
Are you a descendant of America's emancipated slaves, otherwise known as the Freedmen, Foundational Black Americans? Then Freedmen's Affairs Radio is your home for real talk, where history, culture, politics, and economics collide to shape our future. Every Tuesday at 6 a.m. Eastern Time, we bring unfiltered commentary and deep insight into the Black American experience. Past, present, and future. Come join the conversation. Tap in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Amazon Music. This is Freedmen's Affairs Radio, where the lineage speaks.
You've missed the boat and you can't repot it. But one of the things that I'll do is pop the tree out of the pot if the root ball's nice and firmly intact, that is, of course. So everything doesn't, you don't want soil falling off when you remove a tree from a pot, but just pop it out, have a look. One of the first things I'll do is give the root ball a bit of a smell. I'm a root ball sniffer. and it will indicate to me very clearly whether there's any kind of rot issues in there. And if there are rot issues and it's coming out of a pot, let's say in the summer period or non-repotting period, full stop, then what I'll do is I'll look to slip that tree into a bigger pot without touching those roots, but put a really nice big drainage layer of big medium around that, like, scoria, 15 mil scoria particles that go, a good layer underneath and all around the sides of the pot as well, just allowing that root ball to drain out. It's often caused by the pot that's been chosen for the tree and maybe not having enough drainage holes, so that air-water transfer can't happen quite so much. So when you water, the water gets stuck in there and goes stagnant, and the tree's continually sitting in this water, and the roots are starting to drown, and things just aren't happening like they should be. So it starts to rot out. It's that and rot. Anything that rots stinks, and that's how you tell. And with the pots too, another thing while we're looking at rot, the shape of the base of the pot is super important. I know a lot of times you'll focus on what the pot looks like from the exterior, but the functionality of that pot is super important. I spend a hell of a lot of time now with people that I repot for or repot with or teach about repotting, cutting holes, extra holes in pots, because there just isn't enough drainage in there. Or, like I said, I've had big pots come in that have got one tiny hole in the middle and the pot's sort of 50 centimetres across, and you've got one tiny hole the size of your little finger that whole tree is meant to drain from, and there's absolutely no way that anything that goes in that pot is going to survive long term without some kind of a root issue. Doesn't matter how good the soil mix is, doesn't matter how good your fertilising regime is, or that it's in the best position in the yard, or how strong the tree is now. If that root system starts to suffer as a result of that, then it's going to go backwards a million miles an hour. So when you're looking at the inside of your pots as well, look for dips or low points. Often the pot will sag in the middle. Some of the cheaper made pots will sag in the middle, or even any pot can sag in the middle, or it might sag towards the edge. It might have a higher point in the middle of the pot, and then where the drainage hole may be, but then it sags down to the sides of those areas. A couple of things I do to work on that is avoid buying it in the first place if you can, if it doesn't have a nice even level base. But if you are adamant or you do have it and you are stuck with it, then you can look to drill put some holes into that pot and do them in those low spots so the water is going to drain out of that area. The other thing would be, for me, is to put in a drainage layer, if possible, into the pot to allow for the tree to stand up out of that water. Understand that water is still going to be there forever if you don't get it to drain out of there. So the scoria layer or drainage layer or whatever it is that you're using to sort of push the tree up a little bit so it doesn't stay wet, sooner or later those roots will grow down into that area and then they'll start to rot out. So it's only you need to put the tree onto a frequent repotting program every couple of years if the pot's like that. Otherwise, 3 years, 4 years down the track, you may have these issues with rot on the trees. But putting a couple of holes into, using special bits, go to the hardware store and have a chat to the experts there as to what bit to get for it. But they are readily available that you can use. And I've touched wood. I've lost count of how many extra holes I've put into pots, and I've never cracked a pot doing it. There's a technique to it. There's definitely some skill needed to be able to do it, but with practice, you'll be able to. Anyone can do it. Absolutely, anyone can do it. So, have a look into adding that into your bonsai toolkit. I basically have my drill and the bit ready to go. That if when I am repotting, I take that tree out of the pot. I have a look for if the root ball is excessively wet in any areas. Maybe there's not enough holes. A lot of my trees, they've been corrected because they stay in the same pot year on year on year. So a lot of the drainage issues I've corrected already. But if there is one or two that I come across and think, an extra couple of holes in that pot won't hurt, then I'll definitely be looking to put it in. And think about it from the point of view, you hear about this colander growing or these fish, the pool basket growing where they're all open around the outside. The roots grow so well in those, and the water and it just flows away. It doesn't stay around that root ball. When we put them into a closed container of any kind, the water's got to be able to get out of there as well. We want water to get into the tree, but we don't want to drown that root ball. So it has to flow away. Right. So root rot. How to identify it? One, stink. Absolute first thing that you'll notice when you come across it. But you'll also come across mushy roots. Like those roots will not be pleasant. They will look like they've deteriorated, and you'll be able to get them with your fingers, and they'll just sort of start to disintegrate. I saw some the other day, and they looked very similar to the colour of sort of dirt, brownish sort of dirt, and they look like they'd sort of pushed new growth, and then they'd done nothing. The beautiful white tip that we expect with new root growth just wasn't there, and you could sort of touch them and they're all sort of mushy. They're often, not always, but often at that point you'll notice that the root ball is excessively wet as well. Like it's not something that happens and then gets corrected. It's sort of once that water stays with the root system, it's there. It doesn't go away because there's nothing active, or there's very little active to take up that water from the tree. And if you go back to, like, we're looking at repotting season right now, often your root rot issues, you'll have seen them on the tree up the top. You won't have been able to identify what it is, but come late summer, the tree's exhausted, pests start rolling in far more frequently on certain trees. Growth starts to die off. Autumn comes around, maybe it doesn't get its colour, leaves just sort of turn brown and fall off, and it just starts to feel like the tree's got no vigour. It's got no oomph, got no energy, and you start trying to plough fertiliser onto these things thinking that's going to fix the problem, but it just doesn't seem to do anything to the tree. It doesn't help. There's nothing. You're sort of going round in circles, and nothing's happening, and the tree's starting to deteriorate, changing colour on maybe conifer foliage, maybe dropping needles. A lot of that can be linked very, very seriously to the root rot that you'll have. I always think about when I have a problem, try and treat that problem, but then come back to what's the cause. I was going to say the root cause, but what's the base cause for that problem? And almost, not every time, but very, very frequently, I find that the problems that I come across or that I incur are linked to repotting, and more specifically for me to maybe not repotting when I should have repotted it, or it's a root related problem that's being reflected somewhere else on the tree. And I hope this one gets through, because it's the root system on the tree. If you can't tell, for me, is the most important thing. It's not what the tree looks like, but I know if you can focus on the root system, don't have root rot. Use good pots. Make sure you got plenty of water drainage outlets for the tree's roots to get water, but not stay sitting in water. Allowing that root system to grow as fiercely and aggressively with fine feeder roots as it possibly can, then I know that all of my plans, all of my dreams, all of my ambitions that I want to have with this beautiful living tree, I know that I'm going to be a lot closer to being able to achieve those by staying on top of it. And looking at trees and frequency of repotting. This is a big one too. Like, you might have trees that are exactly the same species, but one's on a 2-year cycle because of the way that its root system grows, and another one might be on a 3-year system because of the way that it's a bit slower with its root growth. So even though they're the same variety, you can't treat all trees the same. You don't just simply say, oh, that's an XYZ, so I'm going to repot that every 3 years. That's an ABC, that one, so that's going to get every 2 years, because 2 years might be too frequent. Maybe 3 years is a better result for that type of tree. Whereas the other type of tree, 3 years might be way too long. You might find that it actually starts to really suffer that last year. So all the steps you've taken forward in the first 2 years, by the time year 3 comes around, you start going backwards with your development, because the root system starts to really struggle, starts to become really congested. It can't take up water. It can't take up nutrients. So therefore, all that beautiful growth that you've grown over the first 2 years suddenly starts going backwards. So it's not an exact science, but it's definitely something that you've got to stay on top of. And root rot, looking prior to repotting, it comes with experience. Like, once you've done it a few times, you'll see these issues with the tree. You'll struggle to work out what they are. You'll be throwing things at the tree left, right, and centre, trying to fix problems. And then it'll come time for repotting. You go, okay, I'm going to repot that one now. It's the time. It's good to go. You'll take it out and you'll look at the roots and go, okay, so I've got root rot. It's got massive dead patches. There's black areas on this root system. There's not looking like there's much viable in there, and it's got that stink about it as well. So therefore you go, okay, cool. So the problems that I've had previously, even though I've been trying to manage, whatever it is, it all comes back. It all starts back with the root system not having been looked after. All right, so keep digging. Like, what? Literally, keep digging. But keep looking for what the cause is. All right. So what is it? Is it the pot? Does it have enough drainage holes? Does it need to be replaced? Does it need to go into a grow container for a period of time to bring the strength of that root system back up, which will then bring the strength of the top of the tree back as well? You don't just sort of, it's not like McDonald's tearing through, punching out cheeseburgers. Each tree's got to be assessed, and when you come across these, it's a real, I call it opportunity, right? When you come across these opportunities to learn and to repair and to improve and build strength, sure, you've had a setback. The tree's had a bit of a setback, but learn from it. Make sure it doesn't happen again, and look at the rest of your trees in the same vein. Everything that you do with those trees must be focused on the strength of that root system, because then everything else starts to work. Everything else starts to happen as a result of having that corrected. So root rot, it's a real thing. You'll know when you've got it, and like I said, just chase it back, see what you can do to improve things. Keep an eye on the pots that you're using as well, and make sure that they've got the best facility for that air water transfer for the root system. Allow that water to flow through that beautiful open mix that we're going to be using. And I'll refer back to the earlier section. If you're dealing with a brick, you may find that there's rot on the inner areas of that too, and possibly won't have the stink about it, but it'll be dry, dead roots that you really need to start looking at removing to increase the capacity for the new roots to grow into over time. That's it, folks. Another episode of the Bonsai Stuff podcast done. Spend this next time when you are repotting very, very carefully. Don't rush the process. Be careful with it, because you've got a real opportunity here to make a massive difference to the tree, and not lining them up like a triage and trying to get through as many as you possibly can is a far better way of doing it than, I much prefer to have one tree in the workshop with me and go, okay, my focus is this tree. What do I need to do with this tree? And work those roots, make sure that they're perfect, and smile when it gets to summer and the tree's strong as an ox and autumn comes around, you get beautiful colour on it or whatever it is, or you start ticking things off your plan list going, yeah, I've got that. Look at that sacrifice branch this year. I was working on a pine the other day, and we're looking at a sacrifice branch as to how much it grows. Between internode length on it, you can say, okay, well, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it is. But then there'll be a point in it where you'll go, okay, so was this repotted maybe 3 years ago? And it'll be, yep. And you can see that sacrifice branch has got a really big, long extension because the tree's gone nuts. And then, a couple of years later, the internode sort of dropped back a little bit, maybe hasn't grown quite as well because it's been quite bound in the pot. So repotting is a great opportunity. Don't be scared of it. Do it properly. As I said last week, make sure that you're absolutely thorough and perfect with how you handle it, and dealing with issues like root rot. Hopefully it's not the end of the world. If it goes too far, of course it can kill the tree, but look to remove the rotten roots that are in there. Work them very slowly. Don't leave a brick. Don't put a brick back into a bonsai pot at all, ever. Make sure that you do your job properly. Work it apart. Make it so it's got that nice spongy feel to it. Keep the roots fluffy on the outside, but trim back nice and neat to a beautiful shape. Remove 20-25% of the old root ball. Just check the pot that it's going back into as well, and make sure that for the next 3 years you're going to be going forward. You're not going to have any of these setbacks that may have happened with these issues in the past. Anyway, go forth and rake those roots, and I will see you, or you will hear me next week on the return of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. Thanks for listening in. I love you all. Love your subscribers. You mean a hell of a lot to me, and thank you for all the kind words. I know I say it a bit, but thank you for everyone who reaches out to me and when they see me or whatever and says really nice things about the podcast. It pumps up my tyres and keeps me going. So thank you very much. Until next time, give your trees a big squeeze for me, and I'll do the same with mine. And until then, happy bonsai.